In a phone call with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, US President Joe Biden asked for an immediate ceasefire. According to the White House, Biden made clear the need for Israel to implement concrete steps to address civilian harm and the safety of humanitarian workers in Gaza. Now, this demand has been amplified by the recent deaths of 7 World Central Kitchen workers. US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken briefed about Biden and Netanyahu's roughly 30-minute call.
President Biden spoke a short while ago with Prime Minister Netanyahu. The leaders discussed the situation in Gaza. The president emphasized that the strikes on humanitarian workers and the overall humanitarian situation are unacceptable. He made clear the need for Israel to announce a series of specific, concrete, and measurable steps to address civilian harm, humanitarian suffering, and the safety of aid workers.
The White House did not specify what could change about US policy, but it could include altering military sales to Israel and America's diplomatic backup on the world stage. Prime Minister Netanyahu, on the other hand, has warned of enormous implications for US security if Israel isn't victorious.
This is a larger battle. Our battle is your battle. Our victory is your victory. And if we don't have a victory, this will have enormous implications for American security, for our common future. So we must win. So I have 3 messages for you. The first is we're going to win. Absolutely. Victory is within reach. It's very close. And there is no substitute for victory.
Now, this comes as Prime Minister Netanyahu's office said that his security cabinet has approved a series of immediate steps to increase the flow of humanitarian aid into Gaza, including the reopening of the Erez crossing between Israel and Northern Gaza for the first time since the October 7th Hamas attacks last year. Netanyahu's office said that it would allow its Ashdod port to be used to process aid shipments bound for Gaza and also allow increased Jordanian aid shipments through Kerem Shalom land crossing. The Israeli military said that a probe into the strikes on a World Central Kitchen convoy that killed 7 aid workers earlier this week will be made public soon.
Major General Yoav Har presented today to the Chief of Staff of the investigation. It is now presented to the Defense Minister and the Prime Minister, and I believe after it will be presented to the ambassadors of the relevant countries and the representatives of the WCK, we will make it public in clear and transparent manner, and it will happen soon.
Meanwhile, Israeli forces continue to operate in the area of the Israel-Gaza border, as the Israeli military said it had beefed up forces and heightened the readiness of its troops. A thick cloud of grey smoke was seen rising from the skyline behind a tent camp in Rafah, the southern Gaza city. This is near the Egyptian border, where many Gazans are displaced. According to the Health Ministry in Gaza, during the past 24 hours itself, the Israeli army has killed another 59 Palestinians and wounded 83 more, bringing the total death toll in Gaza to 32,975. I repeat the figure, 32,975, and injuries are at a figure of 75,577. Now, the Palestine Red Crescent Society said that 15 of their team members have been killed since the war in Gaza started 6 months ago.
The Palestine Red Crescent staff and volunteers are working tirelessly to alleviate this unprecedented suffering. Yet, this is not without sacrifice. 15 members of our teams were killed since the beginning of the war.
All right, for more on this, our correspondent Susan Teherani sent us this report on the significance of President Biden's shift in tone towards Israel's conduct in the war against Hamas, and how this may impact the US-Israel relationship going forth. Take a look.
President Biden's shift in tone towards Israel's conduct in the war against Hamas signifies a growing frustration with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and a desire to influence Israel's action through U.S. policy. This shift could ultimately impact U.S.-Israeli relationship, potentially leading to a more conditional approach to U.S. support for Israel, as well as increased pressure on Israel to address the humanitarian concerns in Gaza. Also, President Biden's most trusted advisor, his wife, Jill Biden, is urging for an end to civilian casualties in Gaza. In a meeting with a group of Muslims at the White House earlier this week, the president said that the First Lady has been urging him to, quote, stop it now. This, according to the New York Times, quoting an attendee at that meeting who heard his remarks.
Susan further explains how Netanyahu's resistance to President Biden's demands for a ceasefire will affect the political dynamics in the Gaza crisis and further in the larger West Asian region.
Well, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's resistance to President Biden's demand for an immediate ceasefire and improved humanitarian situation in Gaza will likely lead to increased tensions between the two leaders and potentially strain U.S.-Israeli relations. The White House says that Benjamin Netanyahu was receptive of President Biden's message during this conversation, but critics say that the Biden administration is demanding vague action from Israel. Of course, not only Iran is watching these talks closely, but American allies in the region as well, who are relying on U.S. support.